Chapter 501, Removing the Gauze. Translations Editor, Henyi. The more Zhao Min compared them, the better she felt about Xiaoxing, and she couldn't let go of him. After thinking about it, she decided to persevere to the end. If it really didn't work out, she would take Xiaoxing down even if she had to use her family's power. Zhao Min went to work confidently once again. After changing into her nurse uniform, she picked up Xiaoli's record and prepared to go to the ward. The older nurse grabbed Zhao Min's arm and smiled ingratiatingly as she said, "Zhao Min, the head nurse said that I'll be in charge of Xiaoli from now on. You'll be in charge of the other patient." After saying that, he pulled the record sheet back from Zhao Min's hand and placed the record sheet Zhao Min was in charge of in her hand. Zhao Min frowned. "Why? When did this happen? Why didn't I know?" The older nurse replied, "I don't know the details either. It changed the day after you took leave." Zhao Min slammed the record sheet on the table and went to the pharmacy behind the nurse's station angrily. The head nurse was distributing medicine in the pharmacy when Zhao Min rushed in and asked, "Head nurse, why did you change the patient I'm in charge of?" When the head nurse saw that Zhao Min didn't respect her as her superior at all, her expression turned ugly, but she could only reply patiently, "Xiaoxing requested it. He said that you were too young and asked me to get an experienced nurse." The anger on Zhao Min's face didn't disappear. She knew that Xiaoxing was expressing his stance to Yu Bing. It was difficult to extinguish the anger in her heart, but she had no other choice. If she continued to cause trouble, she would only make him hate her even more. After Zhao Min returned to her seat, she began to think of a solution. The two nurses exchanged looks and raised their eyebrows gloatingly. Finally, someone can take care of her. That's right. The two nurses exchanged looks of schadenfreude. In the examination room, Dr. Min was removing the gauze for Xiaoli. Everyone surrounded her nervously. After removing all the gauze, there was still a round cotton pad stuck to each of her eyes. Xiaoli was very nervous and kept clenching and unclenching her hands. After Dr. Min removed the last cover, he said softly, "Xiaoli, you can open your eyes now." When Xiaoli felt the light that she could sense even before the surgery, she swallowed hard and didn't dare to open her eyes. Instead, she raised her hands and said nervously, "Brother." Xiaoxing hurriedly went forward and held Xiaoli's hand. Then, he bent down and rubbed Xiaoli's head as he comforted her gently. "Little sister, I'll be with you. Don't be afraid." Xiaoli felt much more at ease and slowly opened her eyes. After she closed them, she slowly opened them again. She saw the outline of a figure in the whiteness. The outline was embedded with a layer of yellowish-red light, but the person's face couldn't be seen clearly. Xiaoli was a little flustered and closed her eyes again. Yu Bing was so nervous that her heart was about to jump out of her throat. Xiaolin grabbed the corner of his shirt with an anxious expression, but no one dared to disturb Xiaoli. Xiaoli closed her eyes for a few seconds before opening them again. After she blinked a few times, the figure in front of her became clear. Dr. Min realized that her eyes were focused and immediately said, "Turn around. I'll examine you again." After Xiaoxing let go of Xiaoli's hand, Xiaoli turned around in a daze. When she saw the detector in front of her, she placed her head on the shelf. After Dr. Min's checkup, he smiled at Xiaoxing and said, "Her condition is very good. After another week of observation, she can be discharged if there are no problems." Xiaoxing bowed to Dr. Min and thanked him excitedly. Xiaolin and Xiaoli also stood beside their brother and bowed. Dr. Min waved his hand in dismissal. "It's my duty. Xiaoli, thank your family. They really did everything they could for you." Xiaoli nodded vigorously with tears in her eyes. Xiaoli had never seen her two brothers before. She reached out and touched Xiaoxing's face like before. When Xiaolin saw this, he also stretched his head over. "Touch me, touch me." Xiaoli smiled and touched her second brother as well. In the past, she could only imagine their facial features. Now that she could see them, she felt that she couldn't get enough of them. After Xiaoli finished looking at her two brothers, she noticed Yu Bing, who was smiling at her from the side. She took a few steps forward excitedly and hugged Yu Bing as she shouted with a smile, "Sister Yu Bing." Yu Bing frowned and pretended to be angry as she teased Xiaoli, "I'm unhappy that you only see me now." Announcement: we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 502, Coercion. Translations Editor, Henyi. Knowing that Yu Bing wasn't really angry, Xiaoli shrunk her neck and giggled. Yu Bing smiled and pinched Xiaoli's nose. "This is great. When we get back, you can go to school with your second brother. Today is the Lantern Festival, so it's a double blessing. We'll stew a chicken to celebrate tonight." Xiaoli's eyes lit up and she nodded vigorously. She would have classmates too now. Xiaolin's attention was all on the food. That's great. There's chicken to eat. After the Lantern Festival, the New Year holiday would be over. The food factory would resume production on January 16th, but Xiaoxing wanted Yu Bing to stay for another week and go back with them. Otherwise, if Yu Bing set off alone and had to stay up the entire way, he would be worried. The new year had just ended, so there wouldn't be many orders. Yu Bing also wanted to take the opportunity to nurture everyone's abilities. Moreover, from this year onwards, she would slowly take a more offhand approach. She would have to choose 2 deputy factory directors when she returned, so that she could be more at ease when she left. After Yu Bing made up her mind, she called the village committee and asked Wu Jin for leave. When Wu Jin heard that Yu Bing was coming back with the Xiao family, he smiled widely. Yu Bing, don't worry about the factory. The heads of the various departments have been cooperating for almost a year. Previously, when you were on a business trip, the factory was fine. Just stay. I'll check on the factory every day. Yu Bing knew that Wu Jin had been thinking about her and Xiaoxing. Now, he couldn't wait for her to stay in S City. She smiled helplessly and said, "Thank you." Then, Yu Bing explained the things to take note of when the production resumed. The phone fee was expensive, so after the two of them explained the key points, they immediately hung up. In the ward, Yu Bing and the others were happily discussing what would happen after Xiaoli was discharged. Previously, she could only listen to them. Now that her eyes had recovered, she couldn't waste this opportunity. Otherwise, she would have come for nothing after staying for almost 2 months. Until now, Xiaoli only knew what the hospital looked like. Amidst the harmonious atmosphere, Zhao Min suddenly appeared at the entrance of the ward. "Brother Xiao, Dr. Min is looking for you." Xiaoxing looked at Zhao Min suspiciously. "Hasn't Xiaoli's nurse been changed?" Zhao Min was stunned for a moment. Then, a wronged expression appeared on her face as she looked at Yu Bing resentfully. "I happened to bump into Dr. Min. That's what he told me." The doctor's office was at the end of the corridor. After Xiaoxing thought about it for a moment, he stood up to leave, but he kept a distance of 2 meters from Zhao Min. Zhao Min was embarrassed and angry. She was a girl, but she was being guarded against by a man. Those who didn't know better would think that she was a pervert. Xiaoxing didn't care what Zhao Min thought. He only knew that he couldn't have any contact with Zhao Min, otherwise he wouldn't be able to defend himself. When Zhao Min saw that Dr. Min's office was getting closer and closer, she knew that her lie was about to be exposed. Instead of being exposed in front of others, she might as well say it herself. After all, there were only the two of them now. Hence, she stopped and turned to look at Xiaoxing. "I was the one who wanted to look for you." Seeing this, Xiaoxing turned around and wanted to leave without another word. Zhao Min ran to Xiaoxing and opened her arms to stop him as she said with a serious expression, "Let me finish first. What I'm about to say will affect your life." Xiaoxing glanced at Zhao Min and dismissed her words. However, he thought that it was good to take this opportunity to explain things clearly so that the other party wouldn't keep pestering him. Seeing that Xiaoxing didn't resist anymore, Zhao Min continued, "My father is the deputy mayor of S City, and my mother is the director of the Human Resources Bureau. All of my family members work in the government. As long as you're with me, I can make your family become city residents and even work in the factory." Xiaoxing sneered. "I really didn't expect myself to be so valuable, but I'm unwilling to agree." Zhao Min didn't expect Xiaoxing to reject her without hesitation. She said, "Even if you don't want to think for yourself, you have to think for your siblings, right? Are you going to let them dig in the field for the rest of their lives?" Zhao Min was basically coercing him. She knew that Xiaoxing valued family, so she tried to tie Xiaoli and Xiaolin's future to Xiaoxing's marriage. However, everyone was independent. Xiaoxing had raised them, so as his brother, he definitely fulfilled his responsibility. Xiaoxing had no responsibility or obligation to bear the responsibility for Xiaoli and Xiaolin's future after they became adults. Announcement: we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 503, Indenture. Translations Editor, Henyi. Xiaoxing looked at Zhao Min mockingly. "Their future lives will be in their own hands and can't be exchanged for my indenture." Xiaoxing expressed his displeasure. When Zhao Min saw Xiaoxing's reaction, she hurriedly explained, "Xiaoxing, that's not what I meant. I just want to say that I can give you more than Yu Bing can give you." Xiaoxing didn't want to waste time on Zhao Min. The two of them were too different. "I have hands and feet, so I'll get whatever I want myself. Miss Zhao, please don't look for me again in the future. I don't want others to misunderstand." Xiaosheng's rejection had always been direct and merciless. Zhao Min clenched her fists and stared at Xiaosheng in confusion as she asked, since Yu Bing is an intellectual living in the countryside, there's a high chance that her family is an ordinary family without any connections. I'm not worse looking than her and my family background is better than hers, so how am I worse than Yu Bing? If there's anything about me you don't like, I can change. Xiaosheng replied calmly, you two are two different people to begin with, so there's no point in comparing. However, in my eyes, she's the best. There's no other reason. Zhao Min felt helpless. Xiaosheng's words made her unable to even find a direction to work towards. In that case, he shouldn't blame her for being heartless. Zhao Min looked at Xiaosheng with a trace of ruthlessness in her eyes and her expression was very stubborn. If you don't care if you can become a city dweller or not, you should at least care if Yu Bing can continue working, right? Xiaosheng frowned when he heard this and asked coldly, what do you want? Zhao Min was very happy that she had found something that Xiaosheng cared about and could control him, but she was also very angry at how much he cared about Yu Bing. This contradictory feeling made her feel a little exasperated. Zhao Min smiled proudly at Xiaosheng. Now that you my family background, you should know that I can do many things, such as removing her from her position, making her go to the farm to undergo labor reform, or worse. By the way, my parents dote on me very much. As long as I want it, they will help me do it. Xiaosheng gritted his teeth and glared at Zhao Min. He had never hated anyone so much. When Zhao Min saw Xiaosheng's obvious hatred, she smiled even more happily. Brother Xiao, the choice is in your hands now. See what kind of life you want to choose for Yu Bing. Just as Zhao Min finished speaking, clapping sounded behind her. Yu Bing said in admiration, how impressive. You're using your power for personal gain so openly now? Zhao Min turned around and saw Yu Bing, who was 2 meters away. She rolled her eyes, but didn't answer directly. Instead, she turned around and said to Xiaosheng sweetly, Brother Xiao, give me an answer in 3 days. Otherwise, don't blame me for taking action. After Zhao Min finished speaking, she didn't wait for their reactions. When she passed by Yu Bing, she even let out a disdainful snort. Xiaosheng looked at Yu Bing worriedly, but Yu Bing raised her eyebrows and shrugged nonchalantly. Seeing Zhao Min's departing figure, Xiaosheng walked forward and said in a low voice, we have to make some preparations. We can't let her do whatever she wants. Yu Bing nodded. The other party's family background was indeed more impressive than hers, but it was precisely because of this that this might become the other party's weakness. I'll go to the Xiao family's house to look for Zhang Li L's sister-in-law. Women know more about the complicated relationship between the families of the high-ranking officials' children. Xiaosheng looked at Yu Bing apologetically. I'm sorry for implicating you. Yu Bing said with a serious expression, indeed. To be precise, I was implicated by your beauty. Seeing that Yu Bing was still in the mood to joke, Xiaosheng said helplessly, why are you still teasing me at a time like this? Yu Bing pursed her lips and said with a chuckle, you're the one who's unaware. In the eyes of politicians, love is the least worth mentioning. This matter might not be that serious. It's not suitable to visit someone's house during the Lantern Festival, so I'll call and see if I can arrange to visit the Zhang families tomorrow morning. Some things were easier for women to communicate about, so Xiaosheng didn't get involved. The next day, just after 9 o'clock, Yu Bing brought fruits, osmanthus yams, bean rolls, and a few other snacks to the Zhang family's house. When Lin Shui saw Yu Bing, she welcomed her into the house warmly. Announcement, we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 504, Compromise. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. For the next 2 days, Zhao Min waited very patiently. She didn't take the initiative to appear in front of Xiaosheng, but her good mood every day indicated her confidence in this matter. At the Zhao family's house. When he saw his daughter return from work, Mr. Zhao took off his reading glasses and said gently, little Min, don't go to the hospital anymore for the time being. Zhao Min changed into her house slippers at the entrance and walked into the living room. Why not? Mrs. Zhao carried the fruit plate out of the kitchen and said with a smile, you're not young anymore, so you should start considering your marriage. Your father and I think highly of Zhou Wu. The two of you have known each other since you were young and have a certain level of acquaintance. The Zhou family and we are both in politics, so we can support each other in the future. The two of you will get engaged in 2 months. During this period of time, nurture your relationship. You can continue working after this matter is settled. Zhao Min looked at her parents in shock and shouted, how can you guys determine my marriage without asking me? Moreover, I don't like him. Mr. Zhao frowned. What judgment can you have at your age? We're your parents. How can we harm you? Be good. Zhao Min looked at Mrs. Zhao anxiously. Mom, I have someone I like. I don't want to marry Zhou Wu. Mrs. Zhao hurriedly comforted her daughter. A crush is the most useless thing. Marriage is about daily life. Our families are well matched. If you marry him, you can still enjoy your current lifestyle. Zhao Min's heart was filled with Xiaosheng, so how could she listen to these words? I'm not marrying him. Mrs. Zhao's heart ached for her daughter, so she comforted her softly. However, Mr. Zhao didn't allow Zhao Min to continue being willful. If you don't marry Zhou Wu, are you going to marry him and farm in the countryside? When Zhao Min heard this, she understood. Who complained to you? Dad, with our family's power, we could easily get him a job in the city's factory. This isn't a problem at all. When Mr. Zhao heard this, he became even angrier. You're really something. He already rejected you, but you're still harassing him. Don't you have any dignity? You haven't even married him, but you're already using your family's connections to pave the way for him. Zhao Min, did I teach you to harass men like this? Our family wants a son-in-law who can help us, not a useless son-in-law. When Zhao Min heard her father, who had always doted on her, say that she was harassing a man, tears fell. Then, she turned around and ran back to her room. Mrs. Zhao followed Zhao Min into the bedroom and looked at her daughter, who was wiping her tears at the desk. Then, she said helplessly, Little Min, you should start to mature. In the past, we doted on you because you were young. Now, you should take on the responsibility of being a daughter of the Zhao family. When Zhao Min heard her mother's words, she realized that in their eyes, she was just a pawn for a political marriage. She sobbed as she said to Mrs. Zhao, Didn't you guys dote on me the most? From the looks of it, all of it was fake. You guys were treating me well so that I can contribute to my brother's political career. Mrs. Zhao frowned and said seriously, Little Min, our love for you is real, but since you were born into a family like ours, you don't have the right to choose your own marriage partner. Since you've enjoyed the privileges the Zhao family has given you, you should bear the responsibility of protecting it. Seeing her daughter's swollen eyes, Mrs. Zhao said with heartache, Your father and I married the same way. Didn't we spend our entire lives together? Zhao Min was stunned and didn't say anything else. Seeing this, Mrs. Zhao lamented, You refuse to listen now, but let me tell you this. If you insist on marrying that man, we won't give you any help. Do you really want to go to the countryside to farm with him? Rural people might not even be able to eat meat once a month. Moreover, I heard he spent 10 to 20,000 yuan on his sister's surgery. I think they probably borrowed the money from everywhere. If you really marry him, not to mention meat, if he has to pay off his debts, you might not even be able to eat your fill. Zhao Min was persuaded, mainly because before she entered the hospital, she had stayed in the countryside for half a year to support her father. Zhao Min knew how tough life in the countryside was. After working for a few days, she couldn't take it anymore and started to pretend to be sick. She relied on the money and stamps her family sent to live. Life in the countryside was too tough. Thinking about it now, she still felt a little afraid. Zhao Min was unwilling to give up just like that. However, Mr. Zhao wasn't to be trifled with. He locked Zhao Min in the room and let Mrs. Zhao cook for Zhao Min every day according to the quantity and food standards in the countryside. Zhao Min, who couldn't tolerate not being able to eat meat, chose to compromise in less than 3 days. Announcement, we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 505, Confirmation. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Until Xiaoli was discharged from the hospital, Xiaoxing didn't see Zhao Min again. He asked Yu Bing what she had said at the Zhang family's house that day. Yu Bing smiled. From the way the Zhao family pulled strings to get their daughter into the hospital, but ignored the fact that she was late to work every day, their family is definitely not upright and principled. How can such a family allow their son-in-law to be a farmer who can't help them? Jay only went to the Zhang family to confirm my guess. When Xiaoxing heard this, he knew that this matter was completely resolved. Then how did you let the Zhao family know about this? Yu Bing pursed her lips and said with a smile, I wrote a letter to Deputy Mayor Mr. Zhao and placed it in the government's mailbox. I couldn't see an official like Deputy Mayor Mr. Zhao in person, so Jay could only use this method. Xiaoxing scratched his head as he said with self-reproach, this happened because of me, but I didn't help at all. Xiaoxing had no concept of political marriages at all, so it was normal for him not to know. Yu Bing teased, it's fine. If there's a next time, you can solve it according to this method before I find it. Xiaoxing showed a resistant look when he heard this. Zhao Min already gave him enough of a headache. After being discharged, the four of them stayed for 2 more days according to their previous plan. They brought Xiaoli to a few special attractions and ate a lot of local specialties. Previously, she only knew the name and taste of the local specialties, but she didn't know what they looked like. This time, Yu Bing helped her make up for her regrets. Before they left, Xiaoxing and Yu Bing were invited to the Zhang family's house as guests. Yu Bing asked Lin Shui about Zhao Min. After knowing that the two of them had already begun the blind date stage, although Yu Bing knew that the Zhao family definitely wouldn't let Zhao Min contact Xiaoxing again if Zhao Min could give up on her own, this matter would be completely resolved. On the way back, they took care of each other. Yu Bing could finally sleep in peace. Xiaoli stared at the scenery outside the car window with relish. To Xiaoli, what she had seen these past few days was too shocking. Things that she couldn't visualize in the past finally appeared before her eyes. The person who came to town to pick them up was Wu Qing. Xiaoli could tell who it was from the footsteps and immediately shouted, "Brother Wu Qing." Wu Qing went forward and stroked Xiaoli's head. Then, he smiled excitedly and said, "Can you really see? Or are you relying on your hearing?" Xiaoli replied with a smile, "I've never seen your face before. Of course I relied on my hearing to recognize you, but I can indeed see." Wu Qing carried Xiaoli into the trunk and said, "That's good. Wang Xia asked me when I would pick you guys up quite a few times. You guys are finally back." Xiaoli was also very excited when she heard this. When Yu Bing saw Xiaoli's reaction, she only thought of the netizens in the future. As Wu Qing drove the tractor, the sound attracted the people working in the field. The villagers already knew that Xiaoli had gone to S-City to get her eaves treated. Everyone was very curious about where the money came from. Fortunately, Yu Bing and Xiaoxing had already discussed this matter. Then, they discussed it with Wu Jing. In the end, they spread the version they agreed upon through Wu Qing. Wu Qing said that Wu Jin's family used to have an ancient jade. Seeing that Xiaoli needed money for her treatment, he found someone and sold it for more than 10,000 yuan. In addition, Xiaoxing had saved a powerful family in S-City, so they kindly lent Xiaoxing money for the surgery. The lie Yu Bing fabricated made most people marvel at the Xiao family's good luck. He deserves such luck. It really hasn't been easy for Xiaoxing to raise his siblings all alone. Happiness comes after suffering. These 3 children will be blessed in the future. You guys really believe it? How can he possibly gather so much money? You're not popular, so you can't borrow so much money. Don't think others are the same as you. If he didn't borrow it, where do you think this money came from? That's right. It's not like he doesn't have any difficulties. He got rejected a few times and came back. Isn't he still carrying a huge amount of debt now? It's difficult for Xiaoxing to marry a wife. No matter how handsome he is, no one will marry a debtor. Announcement: we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 506, Recruitment Form. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. The villagers discussed animatedly, but most of them believed the story that Yu Bing had made up. Most of them had only been to the county city, so they didn't expect Xiaoxing to dare to go to the black market to do business. It was very difficult for people who had farmed for their entire lives to know the ins and outs of business. At the dormitory building of the intellectual team, as Yan Yin looked at the recruitment form, he was so excited that his hands trembled slightly and he stared intently at the words on it. Yu Yin, with this watch, I can go back? Yu Yin glanced at it indifferently. Yes, but this is only a part-time job. At the mention of this, Yu Yin was a little angry. Before she came to the countryside, her adoptive parents had found her an official job. Now, she had actually been demoted to a part-time worker. Yu Yin guessed that her adoptive parents must have felt that she was disobedient and wanted to threaten her in order to make her more obedient. Humph. She refused. Yan Yin could hear the disdain in Yu Yan's tone and felt that Yu Yin didn't know how lucky she was. Now that more and more of the factory's work desks were getting filled, it was already good enough for her to get a part-time job. If she worked hard to build a good relationship with the supervisor, it was only a matter of time before she became an official employee. However, on second thought, wouldn't he have a chance if Yu Yin disdained the job? A scheming look flashed across Yan Yin's eyes. Yu Yin, what do you plan to do with this recruitment form? Yu Yin twirled the end of her hair with her finger as she said disdainfully, I'm not interested in a part-time job. I'm wondering if I should sell this spot. Yan Yin was overjoyed. Then how much do you plan to sell it for? Yu Yin said without hesitation, 600 yuan. Yu Yin had already thought about it. With this 600 yuan, she could lend 200 yuan for her sister's marriage and become her sister's favorite sister. She wanted to destroy Yu Bing's status in the hearts of the Yu family one by one. Her parents and brother had already taken her money. Only her sister was. As for the remaining 400 yuan, she had to save it. She had suffered enough when she was broke and didn't want to try again. When Yan Yin heard this number, his heart skipped a beat. However, when he thought of their relationship, he felt that he could bargain a little, so he said gently, "Yu Yin, I want to buy the recruitment form, but you also know how principled my father is. My family can't fork out so much money." When Yu Yin heard that Yan Yin wanted to return to the city, she said unhappily, "Are you going to leave me all alone here?" Yan Yin hurriedly denied it and sat by the bed before hugging her. "I didn't plan to leave you here. You'll return to the city sooner or later, so being a part-time worker is indeed unfair to you. I'll enter the city first to test the water for you. I'll strive to become an official as soon as possible to reach the same status as you. If possible, I was thinking of not letting you rely on your parents to return to the city. I'll try my best to think of a way to get you back. After they see my ability, they'll be more at ease about letting you marry me." When Yu Yin heard the last sentence, she felt persuaded. She really didn't want to rely on her adoptive parents anymore, or else they would always feel that she owed them a lot. Didn't she contribute as well? Yu Yin felt aggrieved that she had to submit to her biological parents for so many years. She had to save money and cut ties with her adoptive parents before returning to her biological family. When Yan Yin saw that Yu Yin looked touched, Yan Yin knew that he had successfully coaxed her and secretly rejoiced. Yu Yin thought about it seriously. In the end, she said, 500 yuan. The corners of Yan Yin's mouth twitched. He had already put in so much effort, but he only got a 100 yuan discount. Yan Yin looked at Yu Yin pitifully. "Yu Yin, my sister just got married some time ago. Our family doesn't have much money now. 500 yuan is still too much for us." Yu Yin was very unwilling to lower the price again. This discount was on account of their current intimate relationship. This is a steel factory. It's one of the most profitable state-owned factories. Just look at the salary. Even part-time workers earn 26 yuan. After they become full-time workers, their salary will be 30 yuan. They will receive an additional living allowance of 5 yuan every month. The employee benefits of the steelworks factory are much better than those of other factories. It's very difficult to find such treatment in our city. Besides, this 500 yuan is only 2 years' worth of salary. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 507, Deputy Director. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Yan Yin looked at Yu Yin, who was in his arms. After a period of recuperation, her face had become a little rosy. As he watched her pale pink lips move, he felt a little tantalized again. After thinking for a while, he decided to use the honey trap approach again. This wasn't the first time the two of them had done it. They quickly became immersed in it. After a round of intimacy under the blanket, the two of them, who were hugging each other, were covered in a thin layer of sweat. When Yan Yin saw Yu Yan's dazed gaze, he began to lick Yu Yan's earlobe. When he heard Yu Yin moan, he suppressed his desire and whispered into Yu Yan's ear, "Yu Yin, after I go to Linshui City, I'll definitely do my best. After I become an official, I'll find pull strings to transfer you back. Then, we'll be together forever." When Yu Yin heard Yan Yin's oath, she felt touched and turned to look at Yao. "Yin, is that really what you plan to do?" Yan Yin looked straight into Yu Yan's eyes as he said affectionately, "This has been on my mind since I got together with you. I'll write a letter later and ask my parents to gather the money. If I can't gather enough money, then I can only take it one step at a time. Even if I can't go to Linshui City, I won't give up on you." When Yu Yin heard Yan Yin's words, she began to feel that she was being a little selfish. She already had skinship with Yan Yin, so there was a high chance that she would marry him. Yu Yin decided to compromise again. She looked up at Yan Yin and said softly, "I can give up another 50 yuan at most. I have a use for this money. If you can't gather it, I can only sell it to others. If it were anyone else, I would have asked for at least 700 yuan, not a cent less." Yan Yin knew that this was probably Yu Yan's lowest price, so he didn't dawdle anymore and said straightforwardly, "Don't worry, I'll definitely get my parents to transfer the money over as soon as possible." After the two of them came to an agreement, they covered their heads with the blanket. Moaning and laughter came from inside the blanket again. At this moment, Yu Bing also received a letter from Yu Pan. The invitation inside stated that the wedding banquet would be on March 30th. There was still half a month left, so Yu Bing planned to use work as an excuse to refuse to return. However, she still had to give Yu Pan a gift. After all, they were biological sisters. If outsiders found out that she didn't give Yu Pan a gift, it would definitely become a topic of conversation in the neighborhood. After Yu Bing finished writing the letter, she took out 20 yuan and planned to go to town to send a letter on another day. In this day and age, gifts were generally 5 to 10 yuan. Giving 20 yuan was considered very generous. After Yu Bing finished dealing with the letter, she went to discuss the matter with Wu Jin. Wu Jin was reading the newspaper in his office. When he saw Yu Bing, he waved for her to come over and take a look. Wu Jin pointed at a few reports and said, "This is today's newspaper. I realized that ever since the Lantern Festival, the news reports have been much bolder. Many economically and politically sensitive words have reappeared. Do you think the political climate is about to change?" After Yu Bing read the contents of the news, she planned to reveal some things. Only then would Wu Jin understand why she wanted to recommend a deputy factory director, and her handover would be smoother. Yu Bing whispered to Wu Jin, "The political climate is definitely going to change. I heard that the college entrance examination might resume in the second half of the year." Wu Jin looked at Yu Bing in shock. Yu Bing nodded affirmatively. "This news is very accurate. I came to look for you today for this. I plan to study hard and prepare for the exam, so I want to recommend 2 deputy factory directors. Firstly, I want to familiarize them with the business. Secondly, if I have to take leave, someone can replace me at any time. Secondly, I plan to expand the market from Zhe province to S city this year. Coincidentally, I'm still here, so I want to mention this to the deputy factory director. If they encounter any difficulties along the way, I can help them think of a way. M/Hen they have the experience of expanding the market. The transition problem of changing the factory director of the food factory will be resolved smoothly." Wu Jin frowned and asked, "This hasn't been confirmed yet, so why are you making such big changes?" Yu Bing said with a smile, "Even if it's just a rumor, don't you believe that I can expand the scale to the level of needing 2 factory directors in a year? Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much." Chapter 508, Recruitment Form. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Seeing Yu Bing display her usual confidence, Wu Jin laughed out loud. "I underestimated your ambition. Don't worry, I'll cooperate. Do you have a candidate in mind for the position of deputy factory director?" Yu Bing was biased towards Feng Kai. After all, she had nurtured him. Moreover, Feng Kai was deeply influenced by her in terms of the factory's development direction. Those concepts were set by Yu Bing according to the development of the era. As long as they followed this path, the food factory could survive the collapse of the village's collective industry in the 1990s. Yu Bing looked at Wu Jin as she said, "I choose Feng Kai. He's the first employee of the food factory and has been with our food factory through its development, so he knows our current development direction. Be it in terms of experience or understanding of the food factory's situation, I recommend him." Wu Jin thought of Feng Kai's identity as an intellectual and hesitated. If the college entrance examination really resumes, what if Feng Kai wants to return to the city? Yu Bing recalled her conversation with Feng Kai and replied affirmatively, "His family situation is special, and his academic results are average, so he wants to hold on to everything GE gas now. The country has also revealed its intention to develop the economy. Our factory has a chance to enter the city. Even if we can't, if Feng Kai can manage the food factory well, the supervisors will promote him. He's more suitable for this path than studying." When Wu Jin heard this, he knew that Yu Bing must have thought it through in advance, so he didn't say object anymore. "Then do you have any thoughts about the other candidate?" Yu Bing shook her head. "Do you have any recommendations?" Wu Jin thought of Shen Ping, who had recently entered the factory. The Shen family's conditions in the village were considered above average, and they were the only few people who had graduated from high school in the mountain village. Previously, he didn't participate in the interview to enter the factory because before the factory was built, he had already become a part-time worker in the factory in town. However, at the end of last year, the factory didn't perform well. He only returned to the village after all the part-time workers were fired. Wu Jin revealed the candidate he had his eyes on. Shen Ping has been working in that factory for 3 to 4 years. The fact that he hasn't become an official employee has a lot to do with the factory's productivity. His experience and knowledge surpass those of many people. Yu Bing knew the people in the factory, but she didn't know everyone in person. She only knew their names. After some discussion, the two of them decided on the candidate for the deputy factory director. Before the announcement, Yu Bing called the two of them over for a heart-to-heart talk. Yu Bing confirmed if Feng Kai was still willing to stay in the food factory and continue to contribute to the collective industry of the He Mountain village. As for Shen Ping, she tested his work ethic and character. She was very satisfied with the outcome of the heart-to-heart talk. After the food factory's deputy director candidate was announced, Yan Yin also received money from his family. Although the Yao family wasn't wealthy, they could still afford 450 yuan. However, Yan Yin wanted to save as much money as possible. After all, the family's money would be left to him in the future. His sister's marriage was just an excuse. In order to create the illusion that it was difficult to gather money, Yan Yin only handed the money over after Yu Yin urged him once. After obtaining the recruitment form, Yan Yin began to think of a way to get Yu Bing to stamp the public seal of the Intellectuals Management Office on the recruitment form. Then, he would take this form to the village committee to get a permission slip and transfer his household register to the steel factory with the recruitment form. Yan Yin thought about his relationship with Yu Bing and felt that he didn't have much conflict with Yu Bing on the surface. At the very least, his schemes against her had never succeeded. Because of this, Yan Yin felt that Yu Bing didn't know what he had done, so he went to the supply company to buy a box of pastries and brought the recruitment form to the food factory to look for Yu Bing. Yan Yin said to Yu Bing ingratiatingly, "Yu Bing, my family found me a job. Please stamp it." When Yu Bing glanced at the factory name and realized that it was in Linshui City, she sneered. Without the spot she had given up in her previous life, Yao Yin obtained the spot to enter the factory from Yu Yin. It had to be said that Yan Yin was quite a gold digger. However, Yu Bing didn't want Yan Yin to return to the city so easily, so she said with a troubled expression, "Yan Yin, it's not that I don't want to help you, but you can only earn 7 to 8 points a day. Your work ability isn't good enough. The spot in the factory is so precious, so if I give it to you, people will say that I'm playing favorites. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much." Chapter 509, Seal. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. When Yan Yin heard this, he knew that this stamp wasn't that easy to get. He immediately handed the pastries over. "Yu Bing, you also know that I'm a scholar. Agricultural work isn't my forte. Can you make an exception?" Yu Bing immediately pushed the pastries back and rejected them righteously. "Don't do this. I won't take anything. I'm just telling the truth." When Yan Yin saw how stubborn Yu Bing was, he was so anxious that he wanted to flare up. However, he didn't dare to curse Yu Bing. He could only squeeze out a smile and continue, "Then what will it take for you to stamp it?" Yu Bing smiled and said, "You make it sound like I'm deliberately making things difficult for you. I've already told you about your problem. As long as you get full work points in a month or two, I can stamp it. Of course, if you think I'm targeting you, you can report it to my superiors." Yan Yin didn't dare to offend Yu Bing at such a critical moment, mainly because he was indeed in the wrong. The intellectual team leader's evaluation of one's performance did depend on one's usual work performance. However, the team leader wouldn't offend those with family connections, since they also wanted to leave a way out for themselves. They might be able to ask for favors. Therefore, after hearing Yu Bing's words, Yan Yin could only shake his head and explain, "You've misunderstood. I didn't mean that. I'll definitely work hard and try to get the stamp as soon as possible." Yu Bing didn't reply when she heard this. She lowered her head and continued to look at the latest quarter's financial statements. Seeing this, Yan Yin could only leave first and think of another way. The reporting time for the recruitment form was limited. The machinery factory gave him 3 months, which was only 2 months away from now. Yan Yin was very anxious. The money had already been spent, so it was impossible for Yu Yin to return it. If he couldn't report on time, the 450 yuan would be wasted. This money was enough to last city dwellers for more than half a year. After thinking about it, Yan Yin could only try to earn more work points. For the next month, Yan Yin took the initiative to do the heaviest work every day. At first, he was worried that he wouldn't be able to hold on. Perhaps the temptation of returning to the city was too great, so he forcibly held on for more than 30 days. In the end, he fell ill on the 35th day. After the sudden increase in workload more than a month in a row and the psychological pressure of not being able to return to the city without a stamp, Yan Yin finally collapsed. He was overworked and he even vomited blood once from exhaustion. When Yu Bing heard this, she only sneered. Compared to how much she had suffered back then, this was nothing. When Yu Yin first found out that Yan Yin didn't get a stamp, she didn't say anything. At that time, she was in a hurry to return to Hang City to attend the wedding. Yu Yin hurriedly applied for leave and left. In the end, she appeared at the wedding event location as Duan Mei's family member. She stayed in Hang City for another half a month and enjoyed spending time with her biological family. However, the joyful time depended on the fact that Duan Mei had obtained another 30 yuan from Yu Yin. Yu Yin didn't think that there was any problem. It wasn't easy for her to visit her parents, so it was only right for her to give them some money to be filial. She wasn't as heartless as Yu Bing. The two sides had completely different motives, but the outcome was the same. When Yu Yin returned to the Yi Mountain village, Yan Yin had already started working hard to earn work points. As long as he didn't ask her for help, she couldn't be bothered to interfere. After Yan Yin rested for a day, he was in a hurry to get a stamp from Yu Bing. Just as he was worried that Yu Bing would find another excuse to reject him, he saw Yu Bing quickly stamp his form. Yu Bing was so straightforward this time because she hoped that Yan Yin and Yu Yin would get together. The closer the two of them were to each other, the more relieved she would be. After Yan Yin received the stamp, he packed his luggage and reported to the steel factory in Linchui City. Yan Yin was no longer around, and Yu Yin was immersed in the joy of spending time with her biological family. No one caused trouble for Yu Bing, so Yu Bing couldn't be bothered with them. She began to arrange for the two new deputy factory directors to work together to expand the food factory's business beyond the province. She played the role of an auxiliary personnel and created sufficient learning opportunities for the two of them. Yan Yin reported to the steel factory in April. Not long after he reported, Yu Hai learned from an acquaintance that the job he had found for Yu Yin had gone to Yan Yin. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 510, Resuming the College Entrance Examination, 1. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. The Yu family's home. Li Xian, who was knitting a sweater for Yu Yin, paused and asked her husband in dismay. Yu Yin gave her boyfriend the job. Yu Hai hugged his wife's shoulder as he comforted her. Don't be agitated. Yu Yin might be afraid that we won't agree to them being together, so she did things first without telling us. However, this isn't a bad thing. Li Xian patted her chest to calm herself down. Then, she asked with a frown, isn't this bad? How much effort did we spend to get that position? Moreover, that guy doesn't seem like a responsible man. Yu Yin is really becoming more and more rebellious. Yu Hai also found it strange. Yu Yin was quite obedient during the new year and had promised him that she would return to the city to work. Why did she change her mind all of a sudden? Li Xian wasn't in good health, so she couldn't be too agitated. Yu Hai could only think of a way to calm her down first. Yu Hai smiled at his wife gently. Isn't love unpredictable? What's the use of us feeling that it's a bad idea? After all, Yu Yin is the one who is with him. Didn't your parents not agree to us being together in the past? Do you think you're unhappy now? We think that guy isn't good for her, but perhaps we're wrong. When Li Xian heard this, she smiled and nudged Yu Hai gently, tacitly agreeing with her husband. Yu Hai continued to comfort her. Think about it. This boy's family definitely won't be able to pull any strings. If he comes to Linchui City to work now, won't he stay here in the future? If we find another job for Yu Yin, she'll definitely come back without hesitation. If they get married in the future, they'll be living under our noses. You don't have to worry about the complicated relationships she'll have to deal with after marriage. That boy's job was arranged by us, so how can their family not think highly of Yu Yin? Li Xian nodded. You're right. In that case, let's forget about this matter. But what should we do next? Yu Hai felt exasperated, but he still smiled at his wife. We can't mention this when we write the letter. We can write about our daily life and continue to look for job vacancies. Li Xian nodded helplessly. When finding a job for Yu Yin, they had already pulled strings twice. If Yu Yin let them down again, she really didn't want to intervene anymore. Time passed day by day. Yu Bing had already slowly transferred most of the work on hand to Feng Kai and Shenping. The products also began to be sold in Jia province and the sales were quite stable. At the meeting, the two deputy factory directors decided that after the sales of the food factory in S City increased, the factory should focus on stable development instead of rapid development. Yu Bing didn't interfere in their market expansion too much. As long as they didn't deviate from the general direction, she wouldn't intervene. Otherwise, according to her strategy, they would have entered S City's market long ago. Jiang Chun and Xiaoxing had been reading and doing practice questions under Yu Bing's supervision for a longer time recently. Since a few months ago, Yu Bing had also hinted to the intellectuals to read more high school textbooks when they had nothing to do. Some people had already guessed something. Because Yu Bing often went to various counties and cities, it was easier for her to obtain information from the outside world than them. Therefore, although everyone was dubious, many people still asked their families to send their books over to start their study. After all, getting into university was one of the few ways they could return to the city. Yu Yin disdained this and felt that Yu Bing was lying. She was just waiting to see Yu Bing get disproven. Both the factory and the village committee subscribed to the official newspaper. What the intellectuals working in the factory looked forward to the most every day was receiving the newspaper from the postman. In the village, there weren't many ways for them to communicate with the outside world. This was one of the few ways. Today, Lu Ming picked up the newspaper. When he saw the shocking news that had just been published in the newspaper, his eyes were filled with disbelief. After being stunned for a long time, he lowered his head and reread it a few times. After repeatedly confirming it, he ran into the factory and shouted, "The country has resumed the college entrance examination." Even when the villagers of the mountain village heard the shout, they didn't stop working. They only looked at him curiously to hear what he would say next. The intellectuals instantly stopped what they were doing. They understood how important this was, so they stared at Lu Ming in a daze. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much.